Hey guys, how's it going? This is Mike from M R Automotive. Today we're doing an installation video of two 40-inch light bars into the grille of the GMC Sierra 1500. First thing we're going to do is remove the two Torx screws that are holding the hood latch. It's a T15. So we're going to go ahead and take those two out. After removing the second, this one should just slide forward. Next, we're going to take out all the push pins. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 total. Get your screwdriver underneath, pry it up, and when the pin goes up, that's when the whole pin comes out. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is the last one. Pin up. 10. After you get all the pins, you can just lift this piece up and move it to the side. After removing the top shield, I'm actually going to reinsert the hood latch just in case the hood gets closed. At least we'll be able to open it. I've had it where in the past I haven't reinstalled it and had to prop it open with a really long screwdriver. So since I don't want to mess with it, I'm just going to go ahead and just put this back. Next thing we're going to do is remove the top bolts. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're 10 millimeter. 3. And the last one is 4. Now we're in the inside of the fender. We're going to remove the two more Torx screws. They are also the T15. After doing that, we're going to go ahead and pry the fender flare off and just grab it on the bottom and just work the clips off by prying against it. Let's get one more. Next thing we want to do is remove this bolt. I think it's a 7 millimeter. I'm using a 9/32. I think it's the equivalent. And we're going to go ahead and pry these two pieces apart. Let me see if there's anything on the inside that I need to remove. Yes, there is. There's two screws that are holding the fender and the bumper together. So either a 7 millimeter or 9/32. Let's get this. It's hard to get in here. Take my word for it. Okay, so I went ahead and loosened it with my ratchet. Now I'm gonna just grab the socket head itself, and I'm gonna use my fingers to get that screw out. There's not too much space in there, so that's the main reason why I like to do that technique. Here's the first one. I'll go ahead and take out. There's one more. There's two total ones in the back. So I got it started with a wrench. Then I'm gonna take the socket and get the rest of it out using my fingers. Here's the second screw. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Follow me. Start with the two Torx screws again. That's 2. Now we're going to pry this flare off, just to get to the one screw that we removed on the driver's side. Okay, lost the clip. These just reinsert if you end up losing them. They kind of go into a groove. There we go. Now I'm going to take out this bolt. And let's not forget the two that are holding the fender and the bumper together. So one is here and one is a little higher. So just like I did on the driver's side, I'm going to loosen it with my wrench and then get the rest of it out with my fingers. So this is the first one. Okay, I got it turning. And I'll just take the socket. Alright, so that's the first one. Almost there. I'm just getting that screw out. Yep. Now I'm getting ready to separate the bumper from the fender. So I'm going to go ahead and just pry it at the part where we took out the initial bolt. And just press it apart and also pull it down a little bit to unlock these. Alright, we got all this. We're going to go ahead and unplug the fog light kit because it comes off with that trim piece. And another thing we're going to do is separate the harness. There we go. This side is done. Let's do the same thing on the drivers. Get your hand underneath that screw that we've taken out initially. Pull it towards yourself and a little bit lower, just to separate and get these clips out. One more. There we go. There we go. So same thing, we're gonna go ahead and take the harness off. And take this off. So the last thing that is this trim piece is held on, there's two clips here, and there's also clips that go along the bottom edge. I think there's 7 of them. Go ahead and try to see if I can pry it from underneath like this and get those clips to unlatch. So first thing I want to do is get this trim piece off. It's also held on clips. Actually, let's try to get to them later. So I did get one, the first one, and now I'm going to work and try to see if I can get the other ones. See, I already heard a couple. And get it from the bottom and just pry it forward. See these clips on the sides? These are the ones that I'm trying to detach. So grab them one by one and work your way towards the middle. There's a harness here. We can pull this out. And then I probably just have one more here. And there we go. It all on clips. And the harder ones I'll show you. So these are the ones across the edge that I was prying against. You can go underneath the truck to release them. In this particular installation, I found it was easier to just pry them one by one, and they all came out.
Yes.
So now that we got the front trim piece off, it exposes 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. So we're gonna remove those. These are 10 millimeters as well. And those should be the last ones for the grill to come off. So there's little grooves here, so pry the top tabs up. That's going to release the top portion of the grill. And it just comes off like that. Now that we removed the grill from the vehicle, we can go ahead and install the M R brackets that are going to be housing the either 1 or 2 light bars. For this installation video, we're going to be doing 1 light bar. In the kit, you'll get a right driver side and a passenger side bracket, mounting bolts for the light bars, as well as the appropriate spacers for the vehicle. So let me show you how to install these. There's 2 bolts inside the grill. We're going to start with the passenger side. We're going to remove these. We're going to slide the M R bracket, and then we're going to reinstall the same bolts. So we get the passenger side bracket. We're going to feed the same bolts that we've taken out in the previous step, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall them. So that's the top. Let's get the bottom bolt. We're gonna do the same thing on the driver's side. On the driver's side, because there's a harness involved, it's easier to feed the bracket through first and then install the bolts. 1 and 2. And same thing, we're gonna go ahead and tighten these. Notice that the light bar bracket has a slotted system on here, so you can position the light bar as high or as low as you want within the grill opening. We're gonna go ahead and get the mounting bolt as well as the washer, feed it through the outside, put the necessary spacer, and that's going to thread into the light bar. We're only going to hand tighten it because we're gonna align the light bar within the opening before we do the final tie downs. Same thing on the passenger side. We're gonna slide the bolt with a washer. We're gonna put the spacer, and then we are going to thread it into the light bar itself. So now that we're looking at the grill, our goal is to install the light bar either through this opening or this opening of the grill. The slot system of the bracket will allow you to slide the light bar up and down to accommodate it. Let's go ahead and shoot for the bottom opening. We're gonna go ahead and finger tighten this to see if we can have the appropriate height. We're gonna mock up the grill just to make sure we have the opening correctly. You don't have to click it all the way in. You can just align it and see. Just from looking, this side has to be brought up maybe 1/8 of an inch. So as we tighten the position of the light bar, I'm gonna try to move it slightly. So we're gonna go ahead and move this one slightly, tighten it, and see how that looks with the grill on. I think it's very straight, so we can proceed with tightening everything down. Okay. Now we're going to do one final test before we start the wiring. As you notice, the grill opening that we decided was this slot of the grill. The light bar can also be used with the same mount to install it on the higher one as well. So now that we've installed a 40-inch light bar on the bottom, we're going to go ahead and add a 40-inch white light bar above it. We're going to thread the bolt, put the spacers, thread one side. We'll do the same thing on the passenger side. Feed the bolt with a washer, the required spacer. Alright, and now we're going to go ahead and space this out for the grill opening. It should be towards the top of the grill. We're going to see how this positioning looks through the grill opening. Let's go ahead and get rid of this wire first. And we'll also zip tie it to the spacer in order for it not to rub against the shutters in case your truck came with them. We want to make sure it doesn't get stuck. So we'll figure out a way to route it after. And I think we're going to have to raise it up a little bit. So I'm going to remove it, readjust it, and try fit it again. Now that we like the alignment of the light bars within the grill opening, we can start putting the truck back together and start working on the wiring. Alright, now that we got the light bars in the vehicle, let's talk about the wiring. Each light bar comes with 2 wires. The red one is the positive, the black one is the negative. We're going to use a generic wiring harness to connect 2 different light bars onto one harness with 2 switches. M R does not sell the wiring harness, but I'll supply a link in the description where you can purchase one on Amazon. Each light bar has over 6 feet of wire, so it should be very easy to connect the light bars to the generic wiring harness. This is the one we've used. I'm going to go ahead and open it and kind of review what wire goes where before we start connecting. Alright, so I usually start going from the relay. There's a relay for 2 different power sources. On one side of the relay there's 2 wires, there's a positive and negative. This goes to the battery and the ground for the vehicle. Then one of the wires from the relay is going to be connected to the light bars themselves. There's 3 wires here. What we're going to do, we're going to fuse the 2 grounds together, and then one of the power is going to be for one light bar and one of the power is going to be for the second light bar. And then the last part of the harness is actually where the switch is. Note that you could disconnect it, and we're going to have to disconnect it when we bring the switch inside the cab. You can see there's a module here with 2 switches, double-sided tape, so you can connect it anywhere on the dash or for your choosing. But we're going to go ahead and disconnect it, feed this through the firewall. We made a small incision in the boot around the steering column. We're going to feed this through, and inside the cab connect the other side of the harness. Follow me inside the cab, I'll show you exactly how I do it. Let me show you where I'll be going through the firewall to get this installed. Alright, I'm just looking through the boot. I think the easiest thing is to puncture the boot that goes around the steering column into the engine bay. We'll poke it through some scissors. The little trick that I like to do, I like to put needle nose pliers in there, spread them apart, put the harness in, and then pull it through the opening. I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So right now I'm going to go ahead and poke through the rubber boot around the steering column. So it's in. I'm going to go see in the engine bay and see if it came out.
The wire, that's where you want me to put the wiring harness in. Clamp? Huh? Clamp it. Okay. Yeah, I think that should work. Oh, you got it.
Alright, now that we fed the trigger wire through the firewall, we're going to go ahead and plug this in. And now we have 2-button controller that we use to power 2 power sources. So in this application, it's going to be one 40-inch white light bar and one 40-inch amber light bar. As far as the wiring itself, you can unpop this. I personally like my switches here where they're very accessible. So we're going to use double-sided tape. We'll mount it here. So let's go back into the engine bay and connect the power to the battery and the ground, as well as the light bar. So here's the wire that we sent through the firewall to the triggers for the switches. Here we have the 2 relays and the 2 fuses. Let's go ahead and worry about connecting the ground and the power. It's a 10 millimeter bolt. We're going to use that to feed the eyelid through and reinstall it. Alright, so the ground is finished. One thing that we noticed, we're going to have to go ahead and extend the power wire of the harness all the way to the battery, which is on the passenger side. For vehicles that have the battery on the driver's side, this wiring harness would be a little more convenient, but because on the Sierra 1500 it's on the passenger side, we're going to go ahead and extend that wire. We sourced some 12 gauge wire that we're going to use for the power. I'm going to go ahead and strip it. I'm going to use a crimp connector. Crimp the wire. That's on the wire side, and I'm going to crimp it to the red wire, which is on the harness side. This wire we're going to go ahead and extend to the power wire here, to the battery, and on this end I'll put an eyelid instead of a crimp connector. Eyelid, I mean it's still considered a crimp connector, just not a, I think butt connector is what they call it. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take off the cover on the battery, and we'll go ahead and install it on this wire here. We're going to go ahead and use this bolt from the battery, slide our eyelid through it, and reinstall the same bolt. Correction, this is called a nut, not a bolt. So now we have a ground and power cable connected to the relays. So the last thing that we have to do for our installation is connect the 2 wires for the light bars to the power wires of the harness itself. So what I like to do, I like to actually shorten them because there's way too much wire. we determined how much wire we're gonna need, and I'm gonna go ahead and trim the rest. If you don't feel comfortable about trimming it, you can just use zip ties and have a roll. But I like to make everything neat so there's not too much wiring in the engine bay. So on the lightbar side, since we have two lightbars, each one of them has a power and a ground. We're gonna go ahead and ground both of the black wires together. And I'll put a crimp connector over it. And each one of the power wires is going to have its own crimp connector too. So we're going to have a total of one black and two red wires. I like to tug on them to make sure we have a good crimp. Okay, so this takes care of the M R light bars. On the wiring side, we're gonna go ahead and strip the wires. Alright, so now we're gonna fuse the wiring from the light bars to the harness. On the harness we have a red, black, and white. And on the M R light bar side, we just have one ground and two different power sources. So we'll go grounds to ground, which is the black cable. And then we're going to do red to red on one and white to red on the second one. For the second one, it's going to be white to red. Now that we got power and ground to the relays, we have all the light bars properly connected and the switches inside the cab. Let's go ahead and test it. Now that we know everything works, we're going to go ahead and put the truck back together, all the panels, use some more zip ties to make it nice and neat, and that's pretty much it. That wraps up the installation. We're going to also put some heat on it. These are heat shrink connectors, so when you apply heat to them, it makes them watertight. You can do that either with a heat gun or a lighter or any type of heat source. Thank you very much for watching our video.